Okay, good morning. It's Tuesday morning. Last night I did a video explaining uh, evolutionary concepts as they apply to pandemics and to coronaviruses in general, um, and mentioned some things about why the real strategy with a coronavirus is to let it evolve. You could fight it, okay, if you're trying to preserve human life and you're trying to keep people out of hospitals, which is really important, okay, because we don't have that many hospitals. If you really look at the situation, we don't have extra capacity. We have capacity for day to day, but not for a pandemic. So you want to keep people out of hospitals. So if you want to save lives, you want to keep people out of hospitals, and you want to keep people living something like a normal life, which is all admirable designs, okay, then you want to fight it. But as I was saying last night, the long-term strategy here isn't to defeat this thing, because we really can't. We don't have the tools to defeat it, because we don't really have the immune system to defeat it, because that's where the rubber really meets the road, right? Your immune system and how well you can fight off an infection. We have the vaccinations, which are mRNA vaccinations that are supposed to sort of train your body in advance to be able to recognize the pathogen as a pathogen, attack the pathogen, and suppress the pathogen. So that's what the mRNA vaccines do, train you to recognize it. That's what all vaccines do, right? That's why we have a polio vaccine. That's why we have a smallpox vaccine, is so that the thing just can't spread through you. I mean, it doesn't stop you from getting the pathogen, because all you have to do to get the pathogen in you is just inhale droplets from somebody walking by or who had the pathogen in them. So we can't prevent you from, unless your mask game is really good or you're doing other forms of avoidance, then you can't really stop yourself from getting the thing. A little more about your mask game in a moment. So they started rolling out these mRNA vaccines. Gosh, I don't know, was it a year ago now or longer? And there was a lot of hemming and hawing at the time. I certainly was like, what is this supposed to do? Because we don't carry around antibodies to coronaviruses. Coronavirus is the common cold, and you can get the common cold every single year, and you can get the common cold more than once during the year. And there are lots of common colds, and half of them are versions of the coronavirus, probably, that used to be really bad news, and now they're just the common cold, right? They've evolved and they've become something less of a problem. So anyway, the reason why I'm doing this video is because CNN comes out with a headline today in their ongoing coverage of the pandemic and the community response to it. And they said they had an expert. It was a guy who actually invented the mRNA vaccines methodology that's currently being used to combat the coronavirus pandemic. And he said, we can't vaccinate everybody every 6 months, twice a year. That's just not sustainable. We do know that they are rolling out what they're calling booster shots. Another headline in the same platform reveals that Israel is rolling out its fourth vaccination, I think second booster, right? So that people are getting now their fourth one, and that makes sense, because really your immunity to this thing only lasts at a workable level. It trails off for a long time, but it starts to trail down enough to be a problem after about 6 months, which is common wisdom. That's how it is with these coronaviruses. Our body just doesn't really learn that lesson very well. So it's a good thing they're not, it's a good thing this one isn't particularly, dangerous. It's just really annoying. I mean, super annoying. And the impact on the hospital system is really annoying. people who might want to use the hospital for something besides laying around, getting over the COVID-19 can't, because all the beds are full of people who breathed the virus and now they have COVID-19. So the hospital can't be used for other things like elective surgeries, maybe even emergency surgeries, right? If you're injured in a car accident, you go to the hospital, it's full of people who are trying to get over their coronavirus infection. Someone has to get booted out. How's that going to work out? So the impact on hospitals is a big problem. So this guy, this inventor, he says on CNN, I'm not one saying it, he's saying it, it's not sustainable to give everybody a booster shot every 6 months. Okay, there's 8 billion people. That's 8 billion doses. What, we can't do that? Sounds like a manufacturing scaling problem to me, but let's just take it at its word. Either it can't be done, there's no manufacturing capacity, it can't be delivered, we don't have enough qualified technicians to do the injections, it's too expensive, there's not enough money to go around, governments won't pay for it, because that's who's really paying for this, right? Whatever it means, whatever the real subcontext is, or maybe all those things apply, right? All those things could actually be in flight here. And he says it's not sustainable. He just summarizes all that, says it's not sustainable. So the big picture here is that the results of your successful vaccination campaign, whatever you went through, two injections and a boost or whatever, it's not going to last. I said in my video last night that their real strategy here, going into the vaccination phase of the pandemic, where we're going to vaccinate people, their real strategy and their only strategy, the only way that was going to work, was if they could vaccinate everybody all at once. Why is that? Well, that means that, let's say it takes 2 weeks for you to kill the virus off in you. You have the virus, but everyone around you is vaccinated. You're the only person on earth that has the virus. Every single human around you is vaccinated, and they were all vaccinated a month ago. So they all have adequate immunity to you, and you're the only person that has the virus alive in your body. Okay, this is hypothetical. I'm just trying to make a point. Then as the virus, as your body fights off the virus is constantly being inhaled into the environment, but it's not finding new hosts because they've all been vaccinated. And so your body fights off the virus is gone in you. It didn't have a chance to spread to any new hosts because they're all vaccinated. And so the pandemic ends. There you go. It just ends, burns itself out. It couldn't find new hosts. It dies inside of you because your body fights it off. And then the pandemic ends. The global pandemic is over. But that's a lot of what ifs to get that to work. The what if is there are very few people that have the virus, and everyone around them is vaccinated, and the vaccine is effective, and they don't get the virus into their systems. So we're ruling out people with compromised immune systems and some other things. That was the only play. That right there, what I just described, was the only real play. Because if the alternative narrative is a bunch of people are vaccinated and they're spreading the virus among themselves, and then as they're doing that, I'm sorry, I have to start over. I'm sorry. A bunch of people are vaccinated, but a bunch of people are not, or their vaccination has lapsed. It's faded away sufficiently. Then the people who are not vaccinated, who are not immune, let's just call it that, because maybe they never saw the vaccine, they never got the vaccine, or they got a vaccine, but it was 6 months ago. So now it's kind of not really working really well, right? Because our bodies don't do coronavirus immunity very well. So you have a combination of people that are vaccinated a month ago, people who were vaccinated 6 months ago and it's waning, and people who were never vaccinated. So in that scenario, the virus can bounce around between people, some of whom think, because they got the vaccine at one point, who think they're immune, but they're not, because no one told them that in 6 months you're going to have to come back. Why did they not tell them that? don't know. Why would they not tell them that? Like, you could say, well, the science was out. It was not real certain. We didn't really know. We don't want to spread misinformation. Well, of course, another reason why might be that if they told people this is only good for 6 months, some people would just skip it. Therefore, creating the situation I just described, where there's people who don't have the vaccine. So this vaccine thing, for it to have worked at all, really, I mean, let's be honest here. The only way that was ever going to work is if the entire planet, or at least the people who are moving around and exposed to other people, all got vaccinated, all at the same time, and it all worked every time. Then we could kill the pandemic. Now, the other thing the vaccine does, which is still quite valuable, okay, before I say that didn't happen. Boy, did that not happen. And I'm sure a lot of people say, well, actually, that was never really going to happen. We couldn't manufacture enough vaccine fast enough. We wanted to get it into the bodies of people who were important or more vulnerable. I mean, Donald Trump got his. Everyone in Congress got theirs. Did everyone else get theirs? No. Okay, so we made sure that important people got it first, vulnerable people got it first, healthcare workers, teachers, vaccine mandates, and all these workplaces. We wanted to make sure they got there so they would be safe and that they wouldn't spread the virus to their customers and clients. And so we were able to do that, and that was all we were able to do. Okay, and that's all we were ever going to be able to do. So the vaccine, therefore, was never, ever, 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 not from day one, and certainly not now, intended to stop the pandemic. Can't do it. The boosters are not intended to stop the pandemic. Not enough of them, and the inventor of the mRNA vaccines tells us that's not realistic. So we can use the vaccine to protect vulnerable populations or people who have to be in public, and everyone else is just going to have to tough it out. Even if you got a vaccine in 6 months, you now have a decision. Are you going to go get another one? Are you going to get the so-called booster? Or are you just going to tough it out? And maybe you don't even know that it's only 6 months, because I still don't hear that going around. They're saying, oh, well, get your booster. But they're not saying why. Well, that's because you need it. The double dose vaccine you had wasn't sufficient. In 6 months, it's just going to be gone. It's going to not be effective. And you're going to have to get a booster. And, until this pandemic is over. So how is the pandemic ever over? Okay, well, that's what I was talking about last night. It's not ever over. Wow, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? But you've been living with a coronavirus pandemic your entire life. In fact, everybody who's alive today has been enduring a coronavirus pandemic their entire life. We have been enduring a coronavirus pandemic that's probably 8,000 years long. What are you talking about? That's insane. No, it isn't, because the common cold is coronavirus. It's a pandemic. It's everywhere, all right? We just don't care. You get the common cold, you get sick, you have the sniffle, sore throat, whatever, and maybe you stay home a day or two, and then you're back to whatever you do. Work, school, flying an airplane, pilot, flight attendant, and that's probably where you got it in the first place, right? All these sick people on your plane, all these sick people on your bus, all these sick people in your classroom with you and around you. And so these things just spread through the community. And they do this every year. At any given moment, they're all over the planet. It's always flu season, cold. I'm not talking about the flu, that's influenza. It's always cold season, common cold season somewhere. So this COVID-19, it's a named coronavirus. It becomes part of the common cold. It just disappears into the background. And my prior video was about how that happens, the evolutionary process by which it evolves to do that. It evolves to become a better parasite, a better partner, because we are its host. And it wants to live inside of us and reproduce, and it needs us for that purpose. It doesn't want to kill us, and it wants to be a better behaved, domesticated virus, because that's in its interest. And so this is going to go the same way. We are not going to beat the pandemic. They're never going to call the pandemic and say, yep, it's done. Put a fork in it. It's finished. They're never going to do that. It's just going to fade away. If you're in a vulnerable population, you should get the vaccine because it does infer some amount of protection against hospitalization and maybe spreading. Probably not, but maybe. If you're a worker in a highly vulnerable field like healthcare or teaching, first responders, anybody who's really dealing with people in large numbers, and especially people who might be vulnerable to the virus, like old people, children, things like that, then you probably need to get your boosters and you need to stay up for your own protection so you don't get sick and go to the hospital, but also so you're less likely to shed the virus into the population. That's kind of your duty to do that. The most contentious part of this entire pandemic here in the US, because we're a bunch of fuckwits, was the mask thing, which was always kind of tragic that got politicized, in particular by the GOP here in the US. That the mask thing was politicized because, honestly, if we did the mask thing and we did it correctly, we wouldn't need the vaccine and we would destroy the pandemic. Honestly. Now, that's a mechanical measure, it's a physical measure to stop the spread of the virus, as opposed to an immunological measure. But it turns out the immunological measure kind of has its limits, whereas the mask does not. It's a physical thing. So if you were to avoid, physical contact with people, continue to elbow bump rather than shake hands, you were to wear a mask, and you were to do at least some small amount of social distancing, these are all physical measures. The virus is on your hand. Don't shake hands. The virus is going to transmit across a distance. Just put a little more distance on. Just do it. And of course, if you're wearing a mask and that person is wearing a mask, then you're not breathing your virus particles onto them because they come out of your mouth and your nose when you talk. Least of all when you of course, when you sneeze and cough, but just even talking. And they have a mask on, so that if anything does get past your mask, their mask might catch it in the fibers a little bit. If it's a droplet, might stick to the fibers. And so these are physical mechanisms. These are physical mechanisms, not immunological, serological mechanisms. These are physical mechanisms to stop this thing. And your mask doesn't expire. And your mask doesn't expire when you are unaware. Like your immunological system might simply run out of protection because your vaccine dose was too long ago, and you don't know that. But your mask is always your mask. There it is. Yep, there's my mask. It's a fresh one. Just took it out of the box. I'm going to put this on. Ta-da! It works, right? There's no question whether your mask is working, provided it's properly fitted. And provided you're wearing it, because if you're not wearing it, well, then it's not providing protection. And you know that, and the person next to you knows that, and they see that you're not wearing your mask, and they put a little more distance on because you're contagious. That's their assumption. So the mask thing was always the answer. It just always was. It was always the answer. I don't know why we didn't take that path. They do that really well in Asia. They don't bitch about it. They just do it. They don't want to get sick, and they don't want to get other people sick. They just do it. Hey, listen, man, they don't want their economy shut down. They don't want stores to close. They don't want kids to be home from school. So they wear the fucking masks, right? So what's your problem, pithead? What is your problem? Do it. Jump. Well, even if we don't do the right thing, this will eventually evolve into something that looks more like the common cold. It'll fade into the background, and the pandemic will be deemed, well, I was going to say deemed over. It's never over. The common cold, the component of that is coronavirus, will never go away, not in the history of ever. Oh, unless everybody wears a mask. We could actually conquer the common cold. There's no vaccine for the common cold. Your doctor will not give you a vaccine for the common cold. They will currently give you a vaccine for COVID-19 because, well, that's a big deal and they have one and they'll go ahead and give that to you. But after this is over, you're not going to be able to get a vaccine for the common cold unless somebody invents one, spends a lot of time and money inventing something. And then even if they do all that, you're still going to have to get it every 4 to 6 months because coronavirus, right? But we could destroy the common cold probably outright if we all wore masks. There you go. If we all wore masks, it wouldn't be able to jump from one host to the other as easy as it does. And the common cold would probably go away as a thing. Eventually, it might just go away. Do we want that? Probably not. The common cold is not a big deal. Okay, someone will tell you they've done the math. Some actuary has done the math, and they say, the common cold every year costs the global economy, whatever, $300 billion in lost productivity. And when they say that, they mean children that can't go to school require a parent at home. That parent is not at work. Parents that get sick at work have to come home and sleep it off. Certain buses don't run, trains don't run, planes don't fly, whatever the problem is, the spreadsheet doesn't get submitted properly on time, whatever. Okay, so things, the gears are sand in the gears of progress and things don't happen and it costs us $300 billion a year. I'm just making that number up. It's probably not that high, but somewhere, somebody has that number. What is the loss in productivity? So is it worth everyone wearing a mask and killing off the common cold? Maybe not. We get by okay. All right. Yes, it's true. Every kid in the classroom gets sick when that little kid comes and coughs on everybody. They all get the cold. And mothers and fathers at home taking care of their kids and trying to do work on the phone and on the laptop computer. And it's kind of a hassle. But after a couple of days, everybody gets over it. They go back to school and the parents go back to work and, whatever. So that's what's going to happen with this. We're not going to kill off the pandemic. We're going to protect our vulnerable communities, community members. We're going to protect our first responders, frontline people who are, a little more vulnerable to getting this thing over and over and over again. And we're going to give these people vaccines and we're going to give people vaccines to try and keep them out of the hospital and maybe possibly suppress the spread a little bit until eventually this thing just evolves to become a better behaved virus, a better behaved partner, because we are partnered with coronavirus for the duration of eternity, right? We can't get rid of them. They don't really hurt us. They don't kill us. They just, they go through us to get to where they need to go, which is, survival in the future. And it's just kind of a partnership now. So, I mean, no one wants to think of it that way, but that's kind of what it is. So I just wanted to share that yes, indeed, the boosters are no longer sustainable. Yes, indeed, we are not going to defeat this pandemic. But my good news to you is that it's just going to evolve, become something more benign. And there are about 30 coronavirus versions that circulate the planet right now as the common cold. So that's where this thing is headed. Not the worst news, not the worst news at all. And the sooner it does that, I guess, the better, right? The sooner it just fades into the background, the better off we're all going to be. So let's hope that happens. Let's hope it happens right away. After Omicron, maybe there's another version of this thing. And it's pretty benign and everybody gets it. And then they get, and then they can't even differentiate it from the common cold. Everybody gets it. Little kids in school get it. Nurses and doctors get it. And it's like sniffles. I want to go home and sleep this off. And it turns out it was COVID-19. Now called the common cold. So something to look forward to.